you've got your Bible, I want you to open up to Psalms 24. Psalms chapter 24. Psalms 24. When you get there, maybe you could just recite today's title, Our Father Owns It All. Our Father owns it all. When you get to Psalm 24, our Father owns it all. God the Father created a place for us called earth, right? And Jesus promised he was going ahead, leaving the earth, going ahead to prepare another place for us in the Father's house. But whether here presently or there eternally, this one truth remains consistent. Our Father owns it all. In fact, you'll never enter into the rest of God until you come to the place that you realize that God the Father owns it all. You'll keep working trying to get yours. You'll keep working trying to have something, think that validates you, but you're working not recognizing the Father owns it all. Not only does the Father own it all, the Father is in control of it all. He's never given up sovereign control over his creation. I call it chicken scratch. People may run around doing all kinds of things, trying to be all mess up all kinds of things, but in the end, they're either going to come into God's purposes or live in rebellion, because God's plan will prevail. He still controls it all. He's sovereignly over it all, no matter what it looks like, what it feels like, what it seems like. If it's going too left, he not only owns it all, he controls it all, and God is the provider of all things. You've never owned anything. You've never actually given anything to everybody. Everything you thought you ever owned was the Father's. He was in control of it. And everything you thought you ever provided for somebody, all you did was give them something that belonged to somebody else. Amen. God is owner. He's in control. He's provider. If we don't get that, we will struggle to enter into his rest and will always come out of his rest. Because if I don't trust him, maybe he's not, maybe he doesn't see what happened, maybe he forget, then I'll take control again. I got to strive and work and fight and compete and watch out and be jealous and be covetous and envious because I need to own some stuff. I can't stand this family and all this responsibility. Everybody's looking at me for all this stuff because you don't realize ultimately he's providing all things. It's not that he doesn't have us work with him in the work, but you work from a place of rest because I recognize who he is in my life. And today, we're going to arrive at that place that if God owns it all, then our role, the only role that's left for us is to manage what he owns. That's right. The only role left for us is to be a steward over what he already owns. That's the only role. That's the highest role. That's as far as any of us can go. None of us will ever get to the place of ownership. None of us will ever get to the place of control. None of us will ever get to the place where we are the providers. In fact, we're just stewarding and managing over what already is our Father's. And grasping this and applying this to your thinking, to your attitude, to your behavior is the difference between us entering into his rest and us living a life of unbelief. Whether it's here temporally or there eternally, this one truth remains the same. Our Father owns it all. Are you ready for this? Psalm 24 says, the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof, the world and they that dwell therein. For he has founded it upon the seas and established it upon the floods. Who shall ascend into the hill of the Lord? Or who shall stand in his holy place? He that has clean hands and a pure heart, who has not lifted up his soul unto vanity, nor sworn deceitfully, he shall receive the blessing from the Lord and righteousness from the God of his salvation. This is the generation of them that seek him, that seek thy face, O Jacob, Selah. See, the earth at verse 1 and everyone in it and everything in it belong to who? Our Father. Even the people that don't know it yet, they belong to our Father. everything, everyone, every plan, every intention, every purpose, they ultimately began with God and they ultimately will bow to God. The Father owns it all. No time in history, no time through the 66 books of this Bible, no time through any of the 2,000 or so chapters that are in this Bible, at no place do we see God giving ownership to man. Stewardship, yes. Management, yes. Ownership, no. Have you ever worked in a job where you were a middle-level manager? As a middle-level manager, you receive the instruction, you receive the direction, you receive the objectives, you receive the intentions, and you also get resources to accomplish those things with. And your faithfulness over those plans, purposes, and intentions, using those resources, whether they're human resources or capital resources or material resources, then go to have you at the place where they've called your management or your stewardship faithful. That pattern came from God. Amen. Except for with God, it's over presidents and kings and nation leaders and moms and dads and coaches, and everybody is owned by God. Every purpose is owned by God. Are all living in it? No. Are all obligated to it? Yes. In the end, what else would God have us appear before the great white throne about? It's because he's never surrendered ownership. It's time to give an account as a manager, as a steward. Have you done my will or your will? Have you acted as though they were my things or your things? You know how we treat things when we think they're ours, and how we treat things when they belong to somebody we respect. You remember that first time that your dad let you drive his car, or your uncle let you use their car? I mean, you drove with your knuckles white and your hands trembling when your friends got in the car. You said, you better not open that Snickers, and you better not drink up there. Don't even move while you get your seatbelt on. But then when it gets to be your car, you lay the seat all the way back to where you laid back on the floor. They can't even see that anybody's driving the car. The music is up, banging the speakers out of the car, and people are eating and doing all kinds of stuff, because we treat things that belong to someone we reverence oftentimes much different than when we get so familiar that we believe it's ours. But the earth is everything physical, everything material, every human being, all plans, all purpose, they all began with God and they will end in front of God. They will give an account. God is the owner, and he maintains, this is hard for us to get sometimes, he maintains ultimate control. Although things may go crazy and chaotic and look so organic and look so unplanned and unprepared, in the end they all find their way into that narrow, straight place that is the will of God, or they make up their mind to be rebellious. They make up their mind to fling him off and reject him. He keeps reminding them, but they keep rejecting him. But nonetheless, it's his sovereignty pressing in. Have you ever experienced that? Where you got comfortable in your stuff and in your way and in your direction, and God just keeps finding some way to, he'll bring up an old song and you'll start crying and remembering. He'll bring in an old friend that really could speak into your life, and they'll start reminding. He'll bring somebody, say, I remember when you were like this, but now you're all the way like this. He'll use a circumstance, a situation, a sandwich will even remind you. He'll use anything. Because he's owner. He manages, but then it drops down and it goes into something very deep here. Verse 3, it says, who shall ascend? Ascend means climb, promotion, advancement. Who shall be promoted? Who could be advanced? But it does something. Spirit says, into the hill of the Lord, or who shall stand in his holy place? You heard this term, hills of the Lord. To an Old Testament saint, the hills of the Lord represented the presence of God. It says, blessed is the one whose trust is in the Lord. It says, I look to the hills from which cometh my My help coming from when I think about hills, I think about going up to places to worship. Solomon went up into Mount Gibeah and burned up 1,000 incense in worship to God. Jesus met the woman at the well, and she said, we worship in this mountain as Samaritans, but you worship there as Jerusalem. But Jesus said, but the day comes. And now it is. Stop worrying about the hills. Stop worrying about where. The day comes that you will come to me and worship me in spirit and in truth. They that seek God will worship him in spirit, doesn't matter where now, and in what spirit, what truth? The truth of the matter that I'm owner. I own all the hills. I own the valleys. I own wherever you're at is good. Honor me as owner wherever you're at. You're in the ghetto, you're in the suburbs, you're in the mansions. I own it all. He's owner. And it says here, well, who shall ascend? This is interesting. Who shall ascend into the hill of the Lord? Who shall stand to his holy place? It's painting this picture of how do we move to greater levels in stewardship? How do we move to greater responsibilities as manager? How do we move here? How do we ascend into the will of God? How do we ascend into the plan of God? How do we ascend into the heart of God? I want to know that. Verse 4 answers it. He that has, go get me some antibacterial right now. But I don't think that's going to work. Go get me some soap right now. I don't think that's going to do it. He that has clean hands and who has not lifted up his soul unto, nor sworn deceitfully. Hands, clean hands. Hands clean. Have you heard anybody say that we caught them red-handed? What they're saying when they say I caught them red-handed is they were doing something they should not have been doing. Having clean hands means that I recognize that God owns everything. A thief has dirty hands. A person who practices doing things with themselves and with others and with God's things that are not right before God, they have, well, how can I ascend to the hills? How can I get to my help? I've got to first acknowledge the fact that God owns me. God owns everything else. God owns everyone. I got to get my hands. I got to stop acting like I own it. I got to stop acting like I'm in control of it. I got to stop acting like I provide it, because as long as I do that, I can't be in my role as steward and manager, because I'm trying to take God's role, and now I'm a thief and my hands are. Well, God, I want my hands to be clean. Well, humble yourself, enter into my rest, and let me lead you by my grace. Stop thinking you provide for yourself. Stop thinking you're in control of your life. Stop thinking that you can do what you want. So many of us grew up saying, I can't wait till I get out this house. Can't wait till I have my money, my car, my own house. And we worked on that so long that we never realized that, baby, God is still in, and God is still the one that provides. You worked on all of that to get your heart all independent, just to find out that you're always going to be a child with God. How do I get my heart pure? Well, a heart speaks about something else, because as a man thinketh in his, then so. So see, what my hands end up doing really proceeded from my heart. And my heart is where my attitudes are. In my heart is where attitude, in my heart is where my beliefs are. In my heart is where my values are. I could give a car and $100 to one person, and based on what's in their heart, they'll go one place. I could give a car and $100 to another person, and based what's in their heart, they'll use their hands to go another place. God owns it. God is in control of it. God is the provider of it. But based on people's hands and hearts, when they get stuff, that's when you really see what's in there. When they have stuff challenged, that's when you see what's really in there. When things don't go the way they thought they would go, when things aren't as smooth as they thought they would be, that's what's really in my heart comes bubbling out. For out of the abundance of the heart, guard your heart above all things, for out of it come the issues of life. He that have clean hands and a pure heart, who has not lifted up his soul unto vanity. That's easy. Lifted up my soul unto vanity means at the root and the heart of me, I believe everything is about me. I believe every purpose is about me. I believe every plan is about me. I believe every meeting is about me. I believe the use of all resources is about me. All of my prayers are about me. One of my good friends that I follow on Facebook recently posted on Facebook, if all your prayers came true, would it benefit just your life or would it benefit the lives of others? I thought that was so profound. What if all your prayers got answered? Would it just be really a picture of your soul lifted up to vanity, or would it be a picture of your hands and your heart before God? Would our nation get better if all your prayers got answered? Would this world get better if your prayers got answered? Or do you really just lift your soul up to you? I mean, stuff might get a little better for other people, because if I had a little extra, I might help them a little bit, you know. But for the most part, my prayers be about, but the earth is the. So we exist, because he comes down, he says, nor sworn deceitfully. I swear deceitfully when something happens to me and I say, I'm never going to do that again. How do you know? You don't own your life. I swear deceitfully when I say, when I get me some money, forgive my colloquialism, when I get me some money, this is what I'm going to do. How do you know? You're swearing deceitfully. Is that God's plan? Have you gotten that purpose from God? Is that something you've laid before God? How about all of your plans? Some of us don't have management or stewardship over much other than kingdom minimum wage, because we already got figured out in our mind what we would do when we get something. And none of what we would do when we get something has anything to do with what God wants us to do when we get something. Well, I just get my degree and do my stuff on my own, God. I ain't even going to wait for you because you haven't blessed me faster. Good, go get your credit cards and get all that in debt. But don't call it blessing. Do not call it blessing. Call it I blessed it myself. And guess who's going to have to pay for all of that? So I don't have time to serve the purposes of God now, Pastor, so don't ask me, because I'm in debt because I'm funding my own plan. I got 4 jobs, that's why I'm not available. My hands ain't available, and my heart ain't right, because when you ask me, I get mad because I got stuff I'm about. I ain't about this God. I mean, I'm about the God stuff when I got a little time, but I don't have that much time. You do that. That's for you. I don't know about that. I don't know. I don't think that's what's here. I mean, it's pervasive. It's an accepted attitude, but I don't think that's what's here in this book of life. We exist, if I really understand, he now that he paints this picture, he says, he shall receive the blessing of the Lord. Who? The one who hasn't sworn deceitfully. Who's going to receive the blessing of the Lord? The one who hasn't lifted up their heart on the vanity. Who's going to receive the blessing of the Lord? The one that has a pure heart. Who's going to receive the blessing of the Lord? The one that has the clean hands. And what is the blessing? The blessing is what God has spoken, what God has declared. God in the beginning spoke over Kevin Brown's life. It's already in the Lamb's Book of Life. The whole volume has been written about me. God said to Jeremiah, before I formed you in your mother's belly or womb, I already. When God says new, it don't mean very nice to meet you. It means I know all the details. I know every chapter. I know the intents that I have for you. He said, before I formed you, he said, I already ordained you. I already purposed you. Well, how will I get to that? By washing my hands. How will I get to that? By purifying my heart. Oh, you mean I don't have to take this class? I don't have to go there? I don't have to do this? No, I'm saying what you first have to do is rest. And from a place of rest, God begins to order the steps of a. And Jesus said, why would you call me good? There's only one good, and that's God. Oh, so I've got to get these steps from, because he owns me. He's in control of me, and he provides for me. Are you ready for this? So the blessing is pursued and received by those who recognize the Father for who he truly is. And I think about this, who better to write this than David? a faithful sheep herder who came to know God and know God's faithfulness. That's who wrote this. Who better to write Psalms 24 than a guy who was alone out in the countryside being attacked on every hand, but he had to keep reminding himself, I'm taking care of these sheep. There's nobody watching me, but I'm taking care of these sheep because I'm reminded of the fact that God ultimately owns them. Other people are like, what are you risking your life for these sheep for? But when I care for something that's not mine, but I realize it's something that belongs to someone else, a spirit of excellence comes out of me that's beyond who and what I am. And he cares for those sheep with so much faithfulness that all the while it's cleaning his hands, it's fixing his heart, and it's putting him in alignment with control of God. Because once I know him as owner, I start letting him control. Let me say it even better. Once I start trusting him as owner, I give him control, to the point that this man writes this, but him giving God control ultimately leads him, and out of a shepherd, or what appeared to be a shepherd, emerges a king, because he has ascended into the hills of God. Can I show you what rest looks like in the midst of the chaotic world we live in? Can I take the last 20 minutes to do that? Look with me over to 1 Samuel 30. 1 Samuel chapter 30. 1 Samuel chapter 30. I got to find it in my Bible. There it is, 1 Samuel 30. What does it look like to acknowledge God as owner, acknowledge God as being in control, to acknowledge God as my provider? What does that look like in everyday life? Who better to ask than the one who wrote Psalm 24, who lived this, and God showed and revealed this to him, and then God caused him by the person of the Holy Spirit to chronicle this. Are you ready to look at this? 1 Samuel 30, I'm going to move through this, verse 1. It says, and it came to pass when David and his were come to Ziklag on the third day, that the Amalekites had invaded the south and Ziklag, and smitten Ziklag, and burned it with fire, and had taken the women captives that were therein. They slew not any, either great or small, but carried them away and went on their way. So David and his men, when they came to the city, behold, it was burned with fire, and their wives and their sons and their daughters were taken. Then the people that were with him lifted up their voice and wept until they had no more power to weep. And David's wives were taken captive. And David was greatly distressed. I want to stop right there. Imagine that. Okay, God, you're owner, you're in control. Okay, God, you are the one that's providing for me, but I come home from work and my whole house is gone. I come home from work and not only is my house gone, it's burned to the ground. I don't see any sign of Angela. I don't see any sign of KJ. I don't see any sign of Olivia. In fact, my whole block, all of Log Cabin Drive is gone. Burned, gone. And I was coming back from work with guys who I work with. We all live on the same street. We'd all been in business together. And when we get there, we noticed that all of our family's gone, everything gone. Have you ever had a day where your whole domestic life seemed ruined? Have you ever had a day where your whole professional life seemed ruined? Have you ever had a day when the people who were closest to you and the ones who you had journeyed with and the ones you thought loved you the most turned on you? And you found out that all the while they had been conspiring against you because they did not like you, but you thought they loved you. But when adversity hits, it brings the worst out. And here David comes home, and David's with his mighty men. You got to understand, he had journeyed with these men a long time. David had hid in the cave of Adullam back about 8 chapters ago, and over 400 men came to him, and he shepherded those. He loved those men. They were in distress. They were broken. They were the outcasts, but they had become a powerful army, a mercenary army, guns for hire, if you will. And they come home from work on this particular day, and their whole city is destroyed. Everything burned to the ground. There's no sign of anything. I could picture a couple of little baby dolls still on the ground, and maybe a little Xbox was laid there burned up, and there's, some stuff, but no body, no crying, no nothing. Everything's gone. You got to understand, these men were warriors. They weren't just any kind of guys. These were guys that fought and killed for a living. They don't get shook easily. But whatever they saw was worse than us watching the news, and the worst things we see going all around the world. We're not going all around the world. It wasn't us looking at somebody else. We were the ones that all this happened to. And not over a couple days, one day. We're coming home with the king-to-be who's been anointed king. We're princes. We're singing songs full of joy. We're going to see our wives, see our kids. We got some fun tonight. You're going to come by when we get home and all that. And as they get in sight of the town, all they smell is smoke. All they see is ashes. Their joy went to ashes like that. Has anybody ever experienced anything like this? Have you ever lost someone you loved? Have you ever lost something you loved? Did you ever think you were doing everything you were supposed to do on the job, and when you got there, your stuff was packed up, and there was a little note that said, come meet such and such? You knew what it meant. You ever been in love with somebody, and you thought y'all had a future together, only to find out that they were presently with somebody else, and it ended like that? And you had spent all your time, you had dreamed forward, only to find out that you were now going backwards. See, these are the times when we find out, is God really owner? These are the times when we find out, is God really in control? These are the times we find out, that we really trust God as provider. Everybody, the famous poet from this lyrical group, New Edition, said, he said, everybody loves sunny days, but tell me, baby, can you stand? Cause it's raining now. Yeah, God is owner when I got a promotion, and you know, my new book just came out, and everybody brought my new book when it came out. And I just got my degree, and I came off the platform with my degree, and the whole world is open unto me. Look at the ring my baby just gave me. Your ring ain't nowhere this big, girl. You know, everything is sunny. But can our relationship with him stand the rain? Or do our hands get dirty fast, our heart gets dirty fast, and all kinds of craziness comes out of us when this happens? That's what happened to these guys. And David was greatly distressed, because on top of all that had already gone wrong, the talk among the guys, the whispering was, it's David's fault. Let's kill him. He's our leader. Why didn't he tell us to set up a garrison to protect home base while we were out there? Why didn't he leave a small battalion here? See, when stuff starts going wrong, if God's not owner, if God's not in control, if God's not provider, we all start looking for somebody to blame. I know when I don't believe God is in control, when I take control and start saying it's his fault, it's her fault, and it's their fault, and I'm justified to have the attitude that I have right now because of what they did. And as a matter of fact, let's kill them. Because the soul of all the people, verse 6, was grieved. Every man for his sons and for his daughters. You've got to go here emotionally to get this. You've got to go to one of these dark days. I know when we go to church, we don't typically like to go to dark days in our imagination. Maybe you don't have to go that far to go to your dark day. Maybe you're in one now, but you've got to go there right now. How do you react? Are you reacting like these men looking for someone to blame? Are you reacting like these men justifying any kind of behavior because look what was done to us, now let me do this to them? Are you one that renders evil for evil? Or are you one that renders good for evil? Are you one that loves those that love you, or are you able to love your enemies? I can love those that love me, because when I love them, they give me back what I want. But if they don't give me back what I want, then you're an enemy. I'm no longer going to love you. That love does not come from the Father. That kind of love is sensual and deceitful, and it's vain, and it's lifted up to self. I just love you because you affirm me. That's not the love of God. The love of God is the love that even if I know you plan to kill me, I still love you, because no weapon formed against me shall be able to prosper. Every tongue that rises up in judgment against me, thou shalt condemn it. Yeah, I will not get in my flesh, for the weapons of my warfare are not carnal, but mighty through God to the pulling down of. How do you act on rainy days? Because we think it's everything else and everybody else, but what pulls us off of the path is that we jump out of our role as steward and manager when we think God doesn't have everything under control. We jump out of our role of steward and manager when we think we don't like how God's planned it out. We jump out of our role of steward and manager when God ain't providing for me the protection I want. I mean, it was easy for David to just shake his fist at God and say, all that I've done for you, I've stayed faithful to you. At this point, I've been following you for 13, 14, 15 years with this prophecy of being king over me. This don't look very kingly today. I'm still running around like a nomad. But instead of shaking his fist at God, he does what we must do. He labors to enter into God's rest. With all Hades breaking out around him, he labors to enter out into God's rest. How do I know that? It says, but David encouraged himself in the Lord his God. What does that look like in the midst of all that, where David just starts encouraging himself? Where they're all talking about killing him, instead of protecting himself, he starts remembering God. Thank you, Lord. I trust you. I believe in you. I'm seeking you. I'm not going back and thinking about how great of a military leader I am. I'm not going back and thinking about how much I invested in all these guys. I'm just going to encourage myself. You're owner. You own it all. I'm going to look to the hills from which cometh my help. My help come. I ascend into the hills right now. Clean my hands. Purify my heart. Fill my heart with what you want me to do. Speak a blessing over me, God. Give me a word for this circumstance. Give me a word for this situation. See, normally what we do is say, well, I'm a great military leader. I'm in control of all this. I got all these weapons. I know what to do. I'm going to go get my wife. I'm going to get Angela. You think Liam Nelson did it. Taken was nothing compared to what I'm getting ready to do. I'm going to get my people. Nobody going to take my son and just roll up and take my daughter. But he doesn't encourage himself in his flesh. He encourages himself in they're different. One leads to works of the flesh. One leads to works that go into his eternal plans, his eternal purpose. You wonder why the same stuff keeps happening over and over. You wonder why you're trapped in the same place over and over. Because every time it gets rainy, you go back to your flesh. I know you knew the word when it was sunny, but you've got to do it when it's cloudy. I want to go through this. It says, and David said to Abiathar the priest. You can't just skip by that. These were professional warriors. Where was the priest at? Where did the priest even come from? Was he with them out on the battlefield? Where did this priest come from? You can't skip by verse 7. These were bloody men of war. These were men that won battles. These were men that had beards that were 10 inches thick and 12 inches long. These were tough guys. Tattoos on their face kind of guys. What is a priest doing hanging out with them? It tells you a lot about David. It tells you a lot about what those group of men were like. When all stuff went wrong, what? Was the priest left and the only one that didn't get burned and taken away by God's providence? I don't know. I believe he was with them. And instead of conspiring with his closest guys and saying, what do you think we should do? Instead of going back in his mind and thinking of the battles that he had won, he lifted up his hands. He ascended into the hills. He got his hands clean. He got his heart clean. And he got a word from God. He got a blessing conferred over him. The blessing is what God says, what God declares, what God confers, what God even shows us. When I see what God is for, if God be for me. See, if you can do this when it's your wife, Maybe you're single. If you can do this when it's your dream, if you can do this when it's your plan, if you can be willing to put everything down and put God first, I don't value anything over him, then you can go get the priest and encourage yourself. See, David didn't have the Holy Ghost, so he went and got the ephod. For me, I might just start praying in my heavenly prayer language. For me, I just put on Thai tribute on here. I'm into that one right now, that love medley. I just put that on and just start walking through my neighborhood. You know, I couldn't go to bed, so I got up at 11:35 and just went out and started walking and praying. I was encouraging myself in the Lord. Got to keep my heart pure. Got to keep my hands clean. Got to go up higher into the hill. Are you ready for this? Let's go further. Let's go further. And David inquired. Not only did he get into his presence to be comforted, he inquired at the Lord, saying, shall I pursue after this troop? Shall I overtake them? And he answered him, pursue, for thou shalt surely overtake them, and without fail do what? What if he had given in to fighting with the little stuff that was going on? What if he had given in to defending himself? What if he had gotten into his flesh? But he didn't. He encouraged himself. He pursued God. And when he did, God did what he promised in Psalms. God gave a blessing. He said, pursue. Not only pursue, you're going to recover all. How often have you tried to go back and get the relationship you lost, but you didn't seek God? You just went back and said, I ain't getting hurt no more. I ain't letting nobody do this to me no more. I'm going to get a short guy this time because them tall guys always do me wrong. I'm going to get with a Mexican this time because Mexicans, they work harder. I know that sounds a little racist. Forgive me. I'm going to get with a black guy this time because they fight for their women. They get bossy. They're angry all the time. I know it sounds racist. But when you don't pray, that's what you do. You start to look at things according to the natural. You start to look at things according to outside. You start to stereotype things. Don't get mad at me. This happens. So David went. He and the 600 men that were with him, and came to the brook Besor, where those that were left behind stayed. Wait, left behind? We were just crying. We had just lost our wives. We just got over a murder plot against me. We just got a word from God. We're on our way to we need all hands on deck right now. We need everybody to be all in on this right now. We need everybody to be about that life right now. It's no time to say I'm not about that. But David doesn't do that because he's not in his flesh. David doesn't do that because he's not in his own strength. He's not moving by his own power. He's not moving by his own might right now. He's moving by the Spirit of God. How often have we done that? But when we recognize God as provider, hasn't he just provided? He's just provided direction. He's just provided a word. He's just provided instruction. And from one person seeking God's provision, it quelled a mutiny, and everybody's on one accord just like that. We often try to get on one accord by our own devices. Worship first. Encourage yourself in him first. Seek him first. All of your negotiating is not going to do it. Get before God and come back. Because he's in. And God, the one who's in control, the one who provided some instruction, and he started leading David in the way to go. But on the way, they had 600 guys. Now a third of their guys fall off. You can imagine that didn't go well with some guys. So David and the 600 men, verse 9, that were with him came to the brook Besor, where those that were left behind stayed. But David pursued, he and 400 men. They had 6. 200 abode behind, which was so... See, you even said it with an attitude. Which was so faint that they could not go over the brook Besor. But David was already confident now. My confidence is not in how many men I have. My confidence is in the word I got from God. Sometimes God sends us in the direction and we lose some of our money on the way, but we trust money more than we do God. Sometimes we go and the people that said that they were with us, we lose them along the way. And we say, well, maybe it's not God. Maybe I should go back. Because we trust people more than we do God. Sometimes we've been on the way, and then when we get there, somebody gives us a negative report. Well, you know, most of the people that do this have this background. You don't seem to have that background. But didn't you get a word? Didn't he say pursue? Didn't he say you will recover all? Hasn't he provided for you with his word? Then go. If 200 stay at the brook and you've only got 400, God will supply all of your need according to his riches and glory. Go. Everybody say that. Go. And it says in verse 11, and they found an Egyptian in the field and brought him to David and gave him bread, and he did eat, and they made him drink water. Seems strange. I mean, aren't we wasting time? I mean, this guy we see laid on the side of the road, I mean, he's a hitchhiker. Aren't we late to get somewhere? Do we have time to help this coworker who's not as an underachiever anyway? Aren't we on our way to get a promotion? Do we really have time to deal with this little Egyptian guy here? But this shows what it looks like when you recognize God is in control. It shows what it looks like when you recognize God owns. The earth is the Lord and the fullness thereof. God, I believe, struck their hearts with compassion and has them stop. It's God showing his control. It's God providing. Amen. How is he providing? We're giving. Sometimes our giving leads to God's provision. No, let me say it right. All the time, our giving leads to God's provision. They stop. They've got limited men now, limited resources now, assumingly limited time. For all I know, somebody's doing something to Angela right now. I got to hurry up and get there. I don't know about these Amalekites. I know what they like to do to women, but we stopping and dealing with this Egyptian. Amen. Give him some water. Give him some bread. Do you do this? Or are you too busy? You about some important stuff. You got a real big mission going on. People often say to me, Pastor Kev, I know you're so busy. And I say to them, I'm busy doing this. Amen. What do you need me for? What do you want me to do? I'll try to connect with you. And when I fail at that, I call and I apologize. I try to make myself present. I'm not that important. My Father's business is important. And David somehow finds the way to get it. And they found an Egyptian in the field, brought him to David, and they gave him bread, and he did eat, and they made him drink water. But then verse 12, and they went further, and they gave him a piece of cake. Come on, ain't the bread and water enough? We don't know how long this trip is, and you digging taking the cake. But they gave him a cake of figs and 2 clusters of raisins. Don't give him my raisins. I don't know this boy like this. I need those. I don't know what we're going to face. But they gave him bread, water, raisins, cake, nothing in it for them, just obeying God, because he owns the raisins. He owns the cakes. He owns the bread. He owns the water. And if God told us to give it to him, we can't go back to acting like owners, even though it seems desperate right now. Give it to him. With 200 men down, 200 bits of supplies down, but give them what God told us to give them. This is why some of us lose our way and don't get the directions, because we think the little stuff that God tells us to do is not important. But this Egyptian, you're going to find out, by his own mouth is the one that slayed all the Amalekites. How, Pastor? I'm going to show you. Verse 13, it said, and David said unto him, let me go back. And he had eaten. Look at this. You could tell he was bad off. It says, and when he had eaten, when he got done eating all their stuff, I got mad. He was just, y'all are just eating all their stuff and going back to sleep, eating their stuff, and they're like, but God's telling them to stay and stay with him. He's drinking all the work. Oh man, and just taking all their stuff, and everybody's probably looking at you. But he goes on and says, but when he had eaten, his spirit came again to him. For he had eaten no bread nor drunk any water 3 days and 3 nights. You can tell a lot about our hearts by who we help. When you only help the people that you think can help advance you, we learn a lot about ourselves. But when we help the people who are near dead and seem like there's nothing they can do for us, and we're out in obscurity, no one would even know if we passed them. When we stop to help those kind of people, you can tell something about us. And David said to him, now they're giving this guy audience with their leader. a little dead, fragile, half-dead man on the road. Now he comes before the king. Let him talk to one of the other guys. No, bring him to the king. And David said to him, to whom belongest thou? You know, where you from? Who's your people? Are you with me? And whence are you? Where are you from? And he said unto him, I'm a young man of Egypt, servant to and my master left me because 3 days ago I fell sick. Now wait, the Amalekites just got all the spoil, all the women, all the kids, all the jewelry, all the stuff. They fat with stuff. They're doing good. They laughing, partying. It was empty, not even a fight. We got everything. The dude falls sick. He was with you. He helped you get everything. This shows their hearts. You sick, you weak. We don't have time for you, bruh. You too weak to keep rolling with us. Let's keep rolling. See, we learn about the Amalekites' heart, but we also learn about God's heart. Who's trained you? Who's your daddy? Who do you reflect? And he goes on, he says, they left me because I got sick, but we made an invasion upon the south of the Cherethites and upon the coast which belongeth to Judah and upon the south of Caleb, and we burned. Hold up. Hold up. Hold up. Did he just say Ziklag? Hold up. Did he say zigzag, or did he say what? You know, so I could hear swords drawn. David's like, chill. Hold up. Because now it's coming. Now I know why God had us give up our water. Now I know why God had us give up our bread. Now I see why he had us give up our cake. Now I know why he had give us raisins. When this dude, we waited with this dude for 3 days to come to. Don't kill him now that we heard where he's from. He might be able to help. God is providing for us. See, God provides in the most unusual, unlikely ways. And as long as you got hands like the world and a heart like the world, you might run right past God, hidden in a sickly Egyptian on the side of the road. But if God says stop, stop the chariot and stay as long as you need to. This dude gives up all the tapes. We burned Ziklag with fire. And David said to him, I'm sure David stayed cool while all his guys, I can only imagine. Because they still got vengeance on their heart. God has David in his heart, and David has God in his heart, because he had encouraged, he had pursued, his hands were clean, his heart was clean, he had been in the hills, he knew God was owner, he knew God was provider, he knew God was in control of this. And David said to him, let me ask you a little favor there, bro. Can you bring us down to this company? And he said, you can tell what kind of people he's been with. He said, look, swear to me by God that you will neither kill me. This is all he asked for. Promise me you're not going to kill me, nor give me back to those guys. And I will bring you down to this company. You know, he didn't trust the people he had been with. He was a little traumatized. And when he had brought them down, look, God used the least to bring them into the most. God used the unlikely Egyptian to be the one that led them into this battle. David was a mighty warrior with 400 mighty warriors, and God uses a skinny, malnutrition, sickly prone bench player to lead them into this, and he takes them right to him. And we find them just the way the enemy always is. Because he's so used to us getting in arguments and killing each other before we ever even get a word from God. He's so used to us when we get a word from God, we start looking at what we have, what we don't have, what they did, what they won't do. We normally get caught at the brook. But he's not used to us actually stopping for the Egyptian, because we normally tell Egyptian, we want to do, but we got to go. And none of us ever get it all like that. But when I know he's owner, when I trust he's in control, when I realize he's providing for me, I look for him everywhere. And they have that conversation with the Egyptian, and when they come down, they find the enemy as he normally is, unaware. You can tell a lot about a person with what they do when they do get. And the Amalekites got, and we can tell a lot about them because they took it all and started spending it on their flesh. Look at what the Bible says. It says, and when he had brought them down, behold, they were spread abroad upon all their. I just get this picture of them laying out there eating grapes and loud music playing, them laughing, them half naked. They got their swords over here. They half drunk and they walking, because look at the picture. He says, they spread abroad upon all their eating and drinking and dancing, because of all the great spoil they had taken out of the land of the Philistines and out of the land of Judah. They weren't ready. And Satan's not ready for you to catch up with the plan of God. He expects you're going to die right here. He expects you're going to give up right here. He doesn't expect you to fulfill the plan of God. You would be so surprised that once you follow and stick with God, when you get there, his yoke is easy. You would be shocked to find out when you finally get there, his burden is light. The way of the transgressor is hard, but when I start to be one that stops lifting up my soul to vanity, stop acting like I own it, stop acting like it's my purpose, it's my plan, and I get his, and I follow him no matter what the stakes are, it's easy. The hard part is the following part. So there they go, all laid out. They were partying and celebrating and drunk. And God provided again, because he gave them an adversary that was unaware. A drunk man is no match for a man full of God, looking for his wife and his son and his kid. No match. So they all drunk apart. Next thing you know, it just was havoc. Havoc. Just wreaking havoc. But this wasn't man's vengeance. This wasn't David's plan. These were the same Amalekites that Saul was supposed to have killed over 10 years before. But Saul was a hard-headed king, but God had finally found his king, a man after his own heart. Go flip a little further. Even probably at this very moment when David and his men are doing what God had asked Saul to do, at that very moment, go to the next chapter, I think Saul is dying at this same moment. At this same moment, I think Saul is being overtaken by the Philistines. Read the next chapter. He's dying while God's will is being fulfilled. Is that what God wanted? No, but he wouldn't acknowledge that God's in control. Is that what God wanted? No, but he wouldn't acknowledge that God was owner. Is that what God wanted? No, he thought he could provide for himself. Because Saul was tall, he was good looking, he was smart. They overlooked David, but he had a heart that was pure. He had hands that were clean. He hadn't lifted up his soul unto vanity. He hadn't sworn deceitfully. He wasn't trying to be something, he was trying to be with someone. And their name was God, our Father. Just want to read through this quickly. I'm going so long, I might as well go longer. And David smote them from twilight even unto evening of the next day. That's some whooping. That's a holy whooping. And there escaped not a man of them save. So it's going to be a part 2 to the movie. Which rode upon camels and fled. And David did what? What did God tell him was going to happen back in verse 8? Without fail, you will. Can I prophesy to you right now? God's talking to us right now. God's pleading with us right now. God's saying, I know some stuff is messed up, but trust me. I know you've been waiting for a long time, but worship me. I know they did you wrong and conspired against you, but I got it all under rest in me. Don't try to do it by your might. Don't try to do it by your power. Let me lead you. Let me guide you. I'll have you come upon the adversary when he's so unready, you'll get everything back. And they got stuff back that they didn't know went with them. This was the beginning of the treasury for David's kingdom that he was going to establish for God. Sunny days. And David recovered all that the Amalekites had carried away, and David rescued his 2 wives. I'll talk to David about that later. And there was nothing lacking to them, neither small nor great, neither sons nor daughters, neither spoil nor anything that they had taken in. David recovered, and David took all the flocks and the herds which they drave before those other cattle and said, "This is." But he proves that he doesn't mean it's his spoil the way we say. What he's saying is, I'm managing this. I'm the steward over this. Not now I'm going to do what I want to do. Where are them 200 dudes? Let's kill them. Where are those guys that have conspired against me? Bring them dudes out. He doesn't do any of that. Because he was not in his own self. He was in Christ. And at verse 21 it says, and David, look, came to the 200 men, which were so faint that they could not follow David, whom they had made also to abide by the brook Besor, and they went forth to meet David and to meet the people that were with them. Look what David did. I love it. And when David came near to the people, he didn't walk up to them and be like, no, because the ones that stayed there were as important as the ones that went ahead. Just because you're on the platform doesn't make you the most significant one. It just means you have a different role. But we need every one of the roles to make up the nation, to make up the body, to make up the... There's no insignificant part. Stay with me. Then answered, and they went, Then answered, verse 22, all the wicked men and men of Belial, of those that went with David. Wait, I thought it was the priest and all the good guys. No, there's always going to be some among you. There's always going to be some among you that heard what you heard, saw what you saw, experienced what you experienced, but their hearts just stayed dirty. Does that mean we're all hypocrites? No. Does that mean that we're all fakes? No. Does that mean that they'll never change? Not necessarily. Does that mean we get to render evil for evil now? No. Because David answered all the wicked men and men of Belial, those that went with David, and they said, look, because they were not with us, we will not give them aught of the spoil. We don't give them anything. Just give them back their wives and their children that they may lead them away. And most of us will be like, yeah, that's fair. That's right, you didn't come, so you know. Here go your wife, here go your babies. Peace. But what would it have meant? To give them just their wife and their children, their houses were burned down. The whole community was destroyed. They all had nothing. God had restored them. And God hadn't just given them what was theirs back. It says that God gave them what they took from the other raids back. Amen. So was it not right to take from the excess and let everybody get their house back? And God had David make sure everybody got their home back in order. God sees us. You might be thinking, I'm way in the back. Nobody sees me. I don't have the education. I don't have this. I don't have that. I'm lagging behind the other group. God still sees you. God's still going to provide for you. God still cares for you. I'm the Egyptian that fell on the road. Well, come, we're going to feed you. You're going to come with us too. God's going to come for you. I said, God is going to come for you. I'm sure their wives and their children thought it was over. We're going to be raped. We're going to be abused. We're going to be enslaved for the rest of it. No, God's going to come for you. When I don't believe God's going to come for me, I jump out of rest and I start working in my own strength. Just want to read this last part really quickly. I'm an hour in now, so I won't be preaching next week. Then said David, I'm kidding, I will be preaching next week. Then said David, you shall not do so, brethren, verse 23, with that which the Lord. See, he saw who was provider. We didn't get this because we're so smart and so tough. That happens to us sometimes. God gave us the job. God gave us the promotion. God gave us favor. Then when we get the check, got my money. That's my money. Don't ask me for none of my money. Don't look at my money. I work for this money. You were at the brook. I went out. You know, they got jewelry and everything. You see, they all came back with chains on, they had earrings on. They all came back, they had big hats on. When they came across them guys, everybody's laden down with everything. They got stuff in their backpacks. They got Jordans on. They got snakeskin shoes on. They got, I don't know. What do you like? They got Kohans on. I mean, they were all geared up. They got Armani on. They're all geared up. Because they got all this stuff. Just stuff. But God's still interested in there. Still interested in there. Still directing both of those things. I just want to get to this last part. Verse 24, I'm close here. For who will listen to you in this matter? But as his part is that goeth down to battle, so shall his part be that tarries by the stuff. They shall part alike. And it was so from that day forward that he made it a salute and an ordinance, for Israel unto this day. And when David came to Ziklag, he sent out spoil unto the elders of Judah, the heads of the different cities in Judah, even to his friends, saying, behold, a present for you of the spoil of the enemies of the Lord. To them that were in Bethel, the first place he sent the choicest gift was to Beth, the house of El, God. I love that. First place David, remember, he says, send it back to us. Send it to where the Ark of the Covenant is. Send it to where Abiathar was trained. Send it to where I got the man that came out and gave me that word from God. Send it to that place first so we can preserve and extend the works of God. And to them which are in south of Ramoth, and to them which are in Jatir, and to them which were in Aroer, and to them which were in Sipmoth, and to them which were in Eshmoah, and to them which were in Rakal, and to them which were in the cities of Jerahmeelites, and to them which were in the cities of the Kenites, and to them which were in Hormah, and to them which were in Korashan, and to them which were in Attach, and to them which were in Hebron, and to all the places where David himself and his men were wont on, all the places that had sheltered them, all the place that has showed them kindness and supported them. See, the Amalekites got their stuff and they partied and were drunk and were destroyed. God's people got their stuff and they established God's kingdom. And they gave to the nations and the cities that were around them. They transformed the cities with what God gave them. Father, thank you that you own it all. Thank you for teaching this powerful truth to us. And we lift up our hands as a symbol of us also lifting our hearts. And we confess out of our mouths, whether it's sunny or rainy, we're ready to live this. Are you ready to live this? Yes. Are you ready to surrender to this? Yes. Are you ready to recover all?